The 2022 Rhino Charge returned to its birthplace in the Great Rift Valley, just south of Mount Suswa and a stone's throw away from where the original event took place in 1989. The Maasai community of Musiro in Kajiado district welcomed teams for the 33rd running of this iconic event that raises money for the Rhino Ark Kenya charitable trust. Whilst much of Kenya is suffering one of the worst droughts in recent times, localised rainfall in the weeks leading up to the charge had turned this usually hot, dry and very dusty area into a lush green oasis. But the thick bush would only add to the challenge that competitors would have to face. Headquarters for the 2022 event would be placed on a wide open plain, dotted with acacia trees looking towards the dramatic western wall of the Rift Valley. Its gentle setting gave little away as to the challenge the venue would present the teams. Scrutineering is always the first port of call and is held the day before the event to ensure cars meet the event regulations, with two main classes for unmodified and modified off-road vehicles. The event is won by achieving the shortest distance possible, by driving in the straightest line between checkpoints scattered around the bush. GPS tracking systems are installed on each car, which also allow the organisers to monitor the teams to accurately calculate their distance and deploy emergency services to any teams in difficulty. This is particularly useful for locating cars abandoned in the middle of nowhere and in need of recovery the day after the event. Several Rhino Charge regulars like Mark Tilbury, Ian Duncan, Alan McKittrick and Adil Kawaja would be absent this year. However, their teams and cars would still be taking part and determined to do them proud. This year welcomed a new ladies team, the Big Five, led by Nicola Muthama. Having never attended the charge in any capacity before, they were excited to have their first taste of this tough off-road event.
What brought you to the charge this year?
Firstly, conservation. And kind of getting involved in something that's so iconic. It seems to represent something about kind of motorsports, also like Kenya's like outdoors and what Kenya has to offer. And like you said, I don't think there are many young Africans in the team, African girls in the team, so we wanted to come and give it a go.
Other more regular teams were excited to once again tackle the event.
We ended up doing the charge last year, majority of the course in three-wheel. So we've changed out the portal gears now, a few other mods that are top secret. Okay. And yeah, we're confident, good to go.
We get very competitive. As soon as it starts, then we are all systems go. Again, this year, it's not about raising money. Well, it's about raising money, but at the same time, we are competitive. So actually, we try and stick in the bush, nothing on the road. So we just keep pushing.
First and foremost, it's for a good cause. And then secondly, we just love it. I mean, I've been doing it since, I think, 2002. So you don't sort of stop doing it now. I guess there was a break during COVID, but we're happy it's back.
We've been charging now for nearly over 25 years, since 94. No, 29 years. And today I think we've got the oldest car. It's a Land Rover from 1956, so it's 66 years old this year. So I think it's catching up with our age too. And yeah, we enjoy it. We come every year, and because we know that whatever is given to the Rhino Ark goes for more than a good cause.
Rhino Charge is not just a competition, but an event that brings families and friends together with one common goal: to raise funds to protect Kenya's mountain and forest ecosystems. Today's youngsters are tomorrow's chargers, and the community spirit amongst chargers is what makes this event so special. Teams gathered for drivers' briefing at the Whitecap Bar, where event director Don White welcomed them to the venue and explained some of the additional information and safety notes the teams would need for the following day's competition.
This is going to be a great charge. You're going to need your big boy pants or your big girl pants, whichever you wear. Safety. Prepare your runners. You have been warned before, and I have said it to as many of you as I can say it to. Trousers, shoes, eye protection. They will need it. Please look after your runners.
The venue for the event is kept secret, and after the driver's briefing, teams collect their maps which will give them a first glimpse of where they're going. 13 checkpoints with GPS coordinates must be plotted on the map before teams then decide the shortest route. The start point is drawn from a hat, with teams starting at different checkpoints. Comparisons between the map and satellite imagery give the teams an idea of the obstacles that they may encounter. However, this is often far from the reality on the ground. Steep ridges, thick wait-a-bit forests, lava flows, huge boulders and river gullies awaited as crews worked into the night. A quick look at some of the different routes planned by various crews shows the variety of approaches and navigational decisions which were made, depending on their start position and direction which they chose to tackle the course. Pre-dawn, June 3rd, 2022. Teams lined up behind their checkpoint controllers, ready to be led out to the venue. As teams moved out towards their start control, they get a first chance to see what lies ahead. Excitement slowly turns to trepidation as reality dawns and the realization that this is going to be another hard day's work. There's a moment of calm at the controls before the start as teams do last checks, ponder if the previous night's work matches the terrain, and runners begin to scout the route ahead.
It looks, from the satellite, you look down, it looks sour, but the mountains in there.
It's going to be tough out there, is it, Jimmy?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's who's got the balls to go down some of the steep stuff is going to win.
It looks rough out there. There's a lot of rocks.
A lot of rocks.
A lot of rocks, but a
ridges.
thick bush. Yeah. But fingers crossed, we'll do well.
Which sectors do you think are going to be the toughest?
Looking at that river, the gauntlet is going to be pretty hard. And then all the southern sector, where it's much steeper.
Okay.
The countdown is broadcast across the radio channels to each control, and at precisely 7:30, the 2022 Rhino Charge got underway. At Sandstorm, the majority of the teams had opted to go in an anti-clockwise direction. Team 42 have won the event on 6 occasions and set off with high expectations. However, within 300 metres, they broke a half shaft and they were down to 3-wheel drive. Team 1 were the only team to go clockwise as they dropped down into the riverbed heading towards Slater.
Well done, Tom! Well done, Tom!
They would get caught out by the almost vertical cliff that they attempted to climb to get to Aquamist before falling into a warthog hole that bent the car so badly they were forced to call it a day.
Keep going! Right! Keep going! Let go now. Just a tree. Good. Shit. Hold on.
At Copycat, teams were immediately thrown into the thick of it, with a difficult first leg for those that had chosen to open the trail towards Slater. The bush was so thick, runners could barely see in front of them to find a route as they climbed the ridge out of the control. Team 48 led the way, the multiple champions hoping to reclaim the crown they last won in 2019. Being the pathfinder is incredibly challenging and opens up the route for others to attempt to follow. Taking advantage of the chance to follow Team 48, Team Kifaru Kwanzaa attempted to tuck in behind. However, they were soon snagged on a rock and would have to find a different route around.
The plan, I think we're trying to lift it up, get it over that rock, because there's a rock stuck right underneath that car, but we've just gone above it now, so fingers crossed we'll get through.
Coming in the opposite direction from Slater and taking a slightly straighter line were Team 60, who had the advantage of dropping down the hill. The Bundu Fundis arrived at Copycat from KFS. The windscreen was already broken as they straight lined through the bush.
No bush too thick, eh?
Today, maybe.
They were soon on their way towards Slater and would set a distance that wouldn't be matched as they carved a more direct line over the hill to take the sector win. At KFS, the Braeburn Sevens and Team Choms were following the path set by the Bundu Fundis. However, after crossing the Lugger, the Sevens team found a more direct route to Copycat.
Ten meters off the road, we just go next to the road.
Your coffee is not strong enough.
Yeah.
You need a stronger coffee.
The Big Five's first charge would end with a broken fan belt and a flat battery. But this was a first taste, and we hope they'll be back next year to give the charge another go. Starting at Vineyard, Team Taz would have one of the longest sectors of the day to contend with first, as they headed to Satao in a clockwise direction, avoiding the Tiger Line from Aquamist to Vineyard that they planned to tackle as their last sector of the day. For the Smiling Shenzis, their day began with a steep 100-metre drop out of Aquamist, opening the track that would lead to Mantec. It was a beastly sector to start, which took them nearly 2 hours as they clambered down the boulder descent. At one point, the car ended up on its side. They almost hadn't made the start after their car wasn't ready, but were fortunate when Team 60 stepped in and lent them their old car. This year's gauntlet that comprised Auto Express, KWS and Toolcraft was situated along a rocky section of the river that traversed the venue. Huge boulders and a steep incline blocked the direct route from Auto Express to Toolcraft, and the option of which way to tackle the three controls would prove decisive. To add to the challenge, the overall distance is multiplied by a factor of 3, and a mistake could cost the team dearly. Team 37 were one of the first to arrive at Auto Express from their start point at Solex. They chose to go upriver to KWS before doubling back to Toolcraft, costing them over a kilometre. The nimble little Suzuki of Team 57 was coming in the opposite direction and would be the first to tackle the crossing from Auto Express to Toolcraft. Proving that genetics are strong, Brandon Barber was quick to demonstrate the same kind of fearlessness as his father George had in the early years of the charge, and dropped the car between two huge rocks. They would take fourth on the gauntlet as their day got off to a good start. Too big to follow the same route, Moto was forced to find a different way off the rocks. The painful sound of diffs crunching on rocks would become all too familiar as the day wore on. They had opted to go to Toolcraft before KWS, thus avoiding the rocky riverbed, but it proved to be a much longer way to go. Team Hoosie demonstrated why they were one of the favourites to win the overall event, as they took an almost straight line up the rocks to Auto Express. It was still early in the day, but no one would be able to match them, and they would take victory on the gauntlet by just 15 metres. Team Taz was spurred on by some inter-family rivalry, and Torben Rune was keen to show Team Hoosie that his beast was just as capable, as he too took a similar line up to Auto Express.
Gentlemen, very nice line. Exciting stuff.
We had one wheel in the air.
Were you expecting the winch to have to come out there, or were you just
No.
confident?
Very confident.
No worries.
We were going to ask them to pull us, brother-in-law. Brother-in-law.
There you go.
Unfortunately, as they dropped down to go to KWS, their rear axle snapped and their charge was over. Team 39 was struggling in two-wheel drive as they attempted to climb out towards Toolcraft. It would turn into a day-long battle that would see them only complete 6 checkpoints. The Bush Babes made their way tentatively along the riverbed from KWS to Auto Express. Regularly in the running for the highest sponsorship award, the Magnet Chargers were enjoying their second outing in the modified Range Rover. Team 26 proved they could compete with the best as they managed the 5th shortest distance on the gauntlet. The Karutu Chargers got off to a good start in the morning, but eventually broke their steering near Satao and had to abandon the car overnight after just 6 checkpoints. The deranged Rover's front axle needed to be strapped up after the bushes disintegrated and the front diff started flopping around, but they were still determined to go as straight as possible. There was plenty of action to keep spectators that had travelled to the gauntlet entertained as the morning temperatures began to rise and the threat of rain disappeared. Car 7, seen here heading to KFS from Mantec, had chosen to go anti-clockwise and were going as straight as possible. In doing so, they set the 7th shortest sector distance, just 80 metres longer than the winner. Team 5 showed that they were in the mood to take the title back as they straightened up their way towards KFS in a clockwise direction from Copycat. This meant they dropped down the hill into KFS, setting the 3rd shortest sector distance.
Thick bush, eh?
Very thick bush. Look at it.
All worth it, eh?
All worth it.
The roving rogues were having a good day with plenty of supporter following. However, on their final sector from Vineyard back to their start point at Satao, they made a navigational error and ended up back at the gauntlet, costing them a potential top 5 position. On the other side of the venue, there was plenty of action at Satao. Situated along the stunning section of the lugger that led into a gorge, there would be plenty of winching for the competitors to do. The KTM cruisers were without Ian Duncan at the helm, but were impressive as they dropped into the gorge coming from Solex.
Yeah. And right down. One way to do it.
The honour of the shortest distance on the sector belonged to Team Huzi, who effortlessly climbed straight out of the lugger into the Satao control, barely needing the winch. The Fat Rhinos were back after missing 2021, but had lost none of their skill as they made their way from Solex in the third shortest distance.
What? That was insane!
Bring it up! Bring it up! Come to me!
Almost as impressive were their team of supporters, who met them at each checkpoint with a drumbeat to keep their spirits up. Team 48 approached the tower from Toolcraft, giving them an easier descent into the lugger and up into the checkpoint. They would then head towards Vineyard, crossing a narrow, steep-sided gully, and would win the sector by 28 metres. Unbelievably, Team 42 set the 5th shortest distance to Vineyard, despite the rear diff turning to porridge, and must be wondering what they could have achieved if the car had been four-wheel drive. Team Olichodo were heading in the opposite direction, having come from Vineyard. They were then forced to backtrack along the river to find a way out as they headed towards Solex, keeping company with the charging hippos and Team 57 in the process. It wasn't an easy day for the unmodified cars, but the Gumtree 4x4 team were tackling each sector as hard as possible. Having arrived at Satao from Solex, they were then forced to backtrack almost halfway back again before they could turn and head south to Vineyard to avoid the more impossible route taken by the modified cars. Peter Kenua was having a great day, charging hard. They were heading towards Solex. Kifaru Kwanzaa's attempt to winch their way along the riverbed using rocks was thwarted, and they eventually decided to winch out the side and head up to the control. Later, they would fall into a lugger near Vineyard, remodelling the front of the car and damaging the radiator, but managed to limp back to Copycat. The Hitarius Chargers were heading to Solex in a clockwise direction, which cost them precious metres on this sector as they were forced to drive along the river before being able to climb out. The Bundu Fundis were more tentative in their approach as they arrived at Satao, but set the second shortest distance from Solex.
That get the heart going, mate?
Well, yes. I mean, these guys, they said, just go for it. What's all this messing about with sand ladders? Yeah,
They would follow Team 48's tracks across the narrow gully out of the checkpoint, but once they reached the top, they would take a different line to Vineyard, costing them 113 metres, but were still third on the sector. Team 61 started out with gusto, completing 6 checkpoints in just 3 hours. Then the day began to unravel, and they'd only complete 9 in the end. The car had a few more moving parts than it was supposed to.
Power, power, full power.
Team Rhino Sirius were showing what they could do as they made their way up the steep rocky hill towards Solex. They then took an interesting route that saw them work their way up to Sandstorm before dropping back south to the Gauntlet. In doing so, they won the sector between Sandstorm and KWS. It's their first sector win and bodes well for the future as they build up their experience. Across at KFS, the mighty Unimog of John Kenyali seemed to be in a spot of bother, but after some careful use of the rear winch, they were soon on their way again. Each year, the teams at the guard post welcome competitors with a big smile and a variety of refreshments to keep weary crew members going. These sponsors are a critical part of the charge, without whom the event couldn't run. The Aussies in Team 63 had a bag full of problems and were happy to make it to Solex for some refreshments before battling on.
Broken a steering arm, seized the engine, managed to get it going again, electrical issues, winch stopped. Typical charge.
Full on.
Pretty usual charge.
The Gauntlet is always busy, as teams that feel they've blown the chance of a podium finish focus on trying to salvage the day by winning this challenge. It's also a focal point for spectators who love a good bit of entertainment. Team 23 showed they were fearless as they dropped off the rocks and raced off towards Toolcraft. The smiling Shenzis would have to wait patiently for oncoming traffic before climbing the rock into Auto Express. They were looking like contenders for overall honours until a navigational mistake, plugging in the wrong waypoint in Grey Cullen's GPS. They would go 600 metres in the wrong direction before realising their mistake, costing them a kilometre. They'd finish second by 700 metres.
Well, Hungary, that must have been fun.
Yeah, it was.
So how's the charge so far?
Awesome, awesome. Such a good event. It's amazing.
Team Olichoda took the same line as the little Suzuki of Team 57. It was a tight squeeze, and they remodelled the passenger door on the way through. King 21 had to get the winch out after wedging the car between two rocks. On the final approach to Auto Express, their prop shaft exploded, flying out of the side of the car in a dramatic fashion. They would fit a spare and carry on. The Mbuzi Bandits put on a great show for the spectators. Their custom rock crawler buggy was in its natural habitat as it eased over the terrain. Car 7 started the assault up to Auto Express looking strong, but suddenly it was all over and the car would spend the night in the gauntlet. Team 5 were not immune from a little rock crunching as they made their way past the stranded Car 7. The smallest and most standard car on the charge, the Jeepers Creepers, would struggle with all the boulders and thick bush. They started out valiantly on their first 3 checkpoints, attempting to straight line through the bush, but eventually would be forced to use the roads and only made it to 7 checkpoints. Hitting the gauntlet towards the end of the day, Team 64 put in a fine performance, taking 3rd but missing out on winning the challenge by just 18 metres. As the day began to draw to a close, there was plenty of action still happening at Tyre World. Team 53 were attempting to winch their little Range Rover up the rocks towards the checkpoint.
Vin.
Team 4 had no such problems as they powered up the hill. The Americans bounced their way up the hill in their unmodified Range Rover. This venue was a massive challenge for these cars, and they did well to reach 9 checkpoints. The Bush Rovers, competing in the same class, had a much better day and would bring their Discovery home 2nd overall in the unmodified class. The Barbars also struggled, but eventually made it up the hill. Team Good Times Day hadn't been quite as successful as they would have liked, but they battled through, getting to 9 checkpoints. There was a flurry of activity at Slater, and the final 30 minutes of the allotted time began its countdown. The charging hippos made it home despite a scare when the car wouldn't restart on the climb up to the checkpoint. It was a fantastic day, finishing in 10th overall.
Oh, that was good.
Well done, lads. Good driving, man.
Well done, yeah, well, good running.
Team 44 smashed their windscreen and then a random stick jumped up and destroyed the mounting for the water pump. Despite attempts at a remedy, they'd be forced to call it a day at Slater. This year, they once again raised the 2nd highest sponsorship. Likewise, the King 21s also made it home to Slater, just 1 place behind in 11th, which was a step up from 12th in 2021.
It was tough. We were 2 hours behind in the morning. Broken prop shaft that we got reconnected and stuck and winched and everything. Very surprised to be here.
Despite the absence of Ian Duncan at the wheel, the KTM cruisers showed that they were still up to the task, finishing in 8th overall.
Left.
Hey! Well done, boys!
Team 55 literally dragged their crippled cruiser into the checkpoint, missing out on a finish by just one guard post. There was drama at the end of the day for Team Husi. After some remarkable straight lining, they were definitely in contention for overall honours, but just 400 metres from the finish, their steering let go. Frantic efforts to repair it and a mad dash to the finish were in vain, as they clocked in 3 minutes late. As a result, only 12 checkpoints counted, and they slipped to 21st overall. It was massively disappointing for the team.
I'm going to write it down, but they told us stop. They told us they closed it.
Already?
Yeah, 3 minutes, guys. I'm so sorry. But I'm going to write it down anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
When you got to like there, so.
Press, man. Well done, man. Well done. What broke?
The fitting broke on the power steering.
The Mbuzi Bandits almost didn't make it after their gearbox started playing up and they lost drive near Satao. It had been such a hard day that they took a moment to realise it was all over. They had lent their spare car to the Smiling Shenzis, offered help and repaired other cars before and during the event. This sense of camaraderie is what sets the Rhino Charge apart, and Ajitesh Kapoor would be awarded the Spirit of the Charge, presented by Trish Coombs, whose husband Rob was one of the event founders. Despite a broken radius arm, prop shaft and a front diff with a mind of its own, the deranged Rovers achieved their best result, finishing 5th overall. At KFS, the Hatarius Chargers made it back with time in hand. They'd thrown everything at the course, but came up just short again, finishing in 4th overall, missing a podium by just 25 metres. The Bundu Fundis judged the day perfectly and would finish with 12 minutes to spare. Tired and weary teams made their way back to HQ as the sun set on another epic adventure. Once again, the Charge had cemented its reputation as one of the toughest off-road events on the planet. The following morning, the Rhino Charge fraternity gathered for prize giving after a night of festive celebrations, storytelling and camaraderie. This year, the prize for the highest fundraising once again went to Team 23, led by Peter Kinyua, who managed to raise an outstanding 39,517,000 shillings, smashing their figure of 36 million in 2021. This outstanding sum once again shows the commitment from this team, and with Peter as the chairman of Rhino Ark, one can be sure these funds will go where they're needed.
To our sponsors, thank you very much, and the directors of Rhino Charge and the Chargers, I thank you all for this great event. Thank you.
Team AK-44, led by Adil Khawaja, took the honours for the second highest fundraiser. They raised an outstanding 21,733,000 shillings. The Magnet Chargers once again took the final podium step with a total figure of 10,840,000 shillings. These three teams combined raised just over 72 million shillings between them, accounting for over 45% of the total funds raised in 2022. While the Charge is a fundraising event, it is also a fierce competition on the day, and the accolade of winning the event for both the modified and unmodified teams is the other reason these crazy 4x4 enthusiasts take part. On the bottom step of the overall classification this year were Team 5. In the absence of Alan McKittrick, they finished in a total distance of 26.9 kilometres. The Smiling Shenzis showed what a formidable team they are, taking second overall in a car they borrowed from the Mbuzi Bandits just days before the event. Had it not been for their navigational error, victory would certainly have been theirs. They finished on 25.54 kilometres. The overall honours, winners' trophy and first in the modified class for 2022 went to defending champions, the Bundu Fundis. They won by 820 metres, with some clever and calculated driving, always shaving a little off their rivals' tracks and keeping a good rhythm. This is their 4th victory, and they'll be back in 2023, hoping to score a hat-trick.
I just wanted to say, on behalf of all of us, thank you to Don and everyone who makes this event what it is. I think Don, at the helm of this event, really gets, what it's like to do it, because he's been a driver, and the courses he sets and the events he sets have been, they've been brilliant. And yesterday was the hardest one he's done yet. We really had to work hard, but we enjoyed it, and I got the sense that everyone did. So thank you to your team and everyone who makes it what it is.
Every team that enters the Rhino Charge raises money for the cause. In 2021, Rhino Chargers raised an incredible 156,279,000 shillings. This equates to over $1.3 million. In keeping with the ethos of supporting communities where the event takes place by charging a land access fee, this year's event raised just over 5 million shillings for the Masiro community in Kajiado County. These funds are raised for the Rhino Ark Kenya Charitable Trust, an organisation set up to safeguard Kenya's mountain water towers and forest ecosystems. For 32 years, this event has continued to support Rhino Ark with its annual fundraiser. Rhino Ark continues to expand its projects both on the Mau ecosystem as well as working with communities to expand reforestation projects. In 2022, Rhino Ark will begin an ambitious project to fence the Kakamega Forest, the last remaining rainforest in western Kenya. Whilst new donors and partners join in the fight to save Kenya's forests, funds raised by the Chargers is used primarily to fund the maintenance of its legacy fence line projects on Mount Kenya, the Aberdares and Iburu. Fires continue to present a serious threat to these ecosystems, and Rhino Ark is at the forefront of combating these fires that are becoming ever more frequent. For more information about the amazing work the Rhino Ark Kenya Charitable Trust is involved in, please visit their website at rhinoark.org. And don't forget to follow them on social media for the latest updates. As the dust settles on the 2022 event, teams are already looking forward to the challenge that awaits them in 2023. Cars will be fixed, modifications made, strategies improved, and funds will be raised. The dedicated team of volunteers that make up the Rhino Charge organisers are once again on the hunt for a new location that will remain a secret, as always, until the very last minute.